Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Minutes after 12 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC as we undertake a crunching gear change. Now, I mean, part of me... 23 after 12, we probably could do this, actually. Part of me just wants to know whether you'd have kept it. But I obviously am going to need a little bit, because I think a succession of people ringing in saying yes, yes, no, no, yes, 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 would be perhaps a little dull. But if we start looking at reasons and possible similar behaviour, I'd love to know. So there's a knock on your door. You go and open it, and it's a delivery. You might not actually be expecting anything, but if your life is anything like mine, then the likelihood of a delivery turning up on any given day is pretty high. In the run-up to Christmas, I think we probably created our own cardboard mountain. Some of the packaging as well. I know this isn't new to anybody, but some of the packaging, it's almost comical. One presumes that after a really boring day in the warehouse, somebody dares someone else to pack up a small box of chocolates in a box the size of a mini Clubman. And some of the stuff that came to our front door in the run-up to Christmas, it had more sort of loose paper holding it all together inside the box. I'm not exaggerating. I bet you had something similar yourself. The amount of packaging. Luckily, it's cardboard and wood rather than plastic, cardboard and paper rather than plastic. But some of the stuff that turned up on our doorstep was, the boxes arrived, Mrs. O'Brien was out. Always quite tempted to have a little peek in the unlikely event that it's something for me. But you can't, because if you want to find out what's in it, you have to unpack it completely. You can't. It's not like the old days where you could just peel it a bit and have a look. Do you know, I remember one Christmas where I found my presents, and it was what would you have done? We're doing moral quandaries. So I wanted a ghetto blaster that Christmas, like a proper sort of music player, but that you could carry around with big speakers. It was the era of Breakdance 2, Electric Boogaloo. And my amazing present, which I was 99% sure I wasn't going to get, would have been a ZX Spectrum. A computer, little computer. I got one a couple of years later, but this Christmas was a little early in the game. So I'm searching the house. Mum and Dad are out. I'm crawling. I've climbed into the top of their wardrobe. I've had a look in the coal cellar. I'm searching everywhere for my presents. And eventually, as it was usually the case, I find them. And I peel back a bit of paper on what looks to be the biggest box. And it is one of those fairly rubbish desktop tape recorders, you know, the kind where, not with two big speakers, Breakdance 2, Electric Boogaloo, the kind of thing that you had in maths lessons. But it's exactly the kind of tape recorder that you had if you had a Sinclair ZX Spectrum. That was your drive. God, young people are going to think I'm speaking Chinese. So instead of a hard disk, or even a floppy drive, or a memory card, or anything like that, a thumb drive, they've been in the news a lot recently. Apart from all of that, before all of that, you had an old-fashioned cassette recorder that you linked up to your computer, and the noises that were on the tape, which went a bit like this, that was computer code, which when you played it through your computer, made games appear on your screen. I may have simplified the process somewhat. So I found this tape recorder, which was not what I wanted as a tape recorder, but could have been a gift in conjunction with a Sinclair ZX Spectrum. So what would you have done? Would you have dropped hints to your mum and dad that you didn't want that kind of tape recorder, you wanted a ghetto blaster? Or would you have stayed stum and hoped that you were getting the Sinclair ZX Spectrum as well? It's not dissimilar from the moral quandary that I'm going to lie in front of you now, which is, if someone delivered a £25,000 watch to your house, would you keep it? Having read the story of the man who did, I'd urge you not to, because he's just got a 14-week suspended jail term and has been ordered to complete 200 hours of unpaid work and pay £200 of costs after admitting theft. We generally value money and belongings more in British justice than we do people. I don't think I win any prizes for pointing that out. But if you deliver something to my house, then I would probably argue that the offence, if there's any, is yours. You deliver it to my house. I haven't got all the details, so obviously if you open the door and said, excuse me, are you Danny LaRue? And I said, yes, where do I sign? Then there'd be a degree of fraudulence involved, but not that much. It's got my address on it. You deliver it to my house. So if I wasn't married to Mrs. O'Brien, I think I would probably have tried to keep this watch. Although, given that the detail might have suggested a prosecution was looming around the corner, I probably would have bottled it. What would you have done? Is there any argument at all here for you? Because the law is generally pretty solid in this country, but it does lean more towards belongings than it does towards humans. What would you have done? Have you done anything similar? And I just remembered a coffee table that I kept. But after telling John Lewis that they delivered 2 coffee tables by accident, John Lewis turned around and said, well, you may as well keep the other one. It's going to be too... It was our wedding list, so we had a whole flat full of kit. It'd be too much of a palaver to come back and pick it up. I'm interested in the morality of finders keepers. Does having something delivered in error to your front door, in your moral universe, constitute finders keepers, losers weepers? In my moral universe, it does. So I'm jolly glad I now know that in British Justice's moral universe, it doesn't. In British Justice's moral universe, I'm going to get a criminal record for keeping something you've delivered to my house by accident. And I'm afraid that does seem unfair to me. It's coming out to 12:30. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. My apologies if you were waiting to talk about hijabs. I suspect that's a subject that we'll return to in one way or another in the coming months. But I just want to, for a bit of light relief, for the last half hour of the programme, I got a very interesting update on that Garden Bridge as well. I figured that since Boris Johnson has now started punting the idea of another bridge, we should probably have a look at what's happened to that 46 million quid he spent on the last one that never saw a single brick laid. It won't make happy listening, I'm afraid, but it is important, and it is one of those things that if it wasn't for the Architects Journal, I don't know if anyone on Fleet Street, any British journalists at all, would be trying to find out what happened to that 46 million quid. We will, after that, return with a question of whether or not someone delivering in error something valuable to your house should be filed under finders keepers, losers weepers, or should end up with a criminal record. It's 12:30, and it's just a bit of fun regarding a story that stopped me in my tracks today, because I just thought perhaps there but for the grace of God. Problem is, if someone delivered a 25 grand watch to my house, the only reason to keep it would be to flog it. And how on earth I'd manage to get 20 grand, well, I don't know what you'd get for it second hand, probably about the same. Watches are very good at, actually takes us back to the first hour. That's why they're very popular with money launderers and criminals. Very expensive watches, because they keep their value as they cross borders and time zones. And as time passes, they don't depreciate as a lot of other things do. But how on earth am I going to be 20 grand to the good without Mrs. O'Brien smelling a rat? What am I going to start doing? So what would you do? Marty's in Belfast. Marty, what do you think?
Hi, James. How you doing?
Grand, thanks.
It obviously wasn't... It didn't belong to the guy, so he should have sent it back. However, do you think for 1 second that this would have made any kind of story had it been a James Ratner watch at £6.50?
Yes. It is just the value, isn't it, that changes the moral kind of compulsion or dimension.
It is.
Gerald
Ratner. And at what point does it become morally...
Well, that's it. You tell me. You tell me. So here's a watch. It's arrived at your house. It's worth... You've checked it online. It's worth 50 quid. Send it back or keep it.
You're going to bring me into a conversation that I mentioned to your researcher that we had just at the weekend, and it was in terms of finding an envelope of cash on the street.
Yeah.
At what point do you not put it in your pocket and take it to the police station?
There is a point, because oddly enough, if someone's lost 10 quid and it means a lot to them, it doesn't matter whether or not someone else finds 500 quid. You don't know how much that money means to the person who's lost it, but you know how much it means to you, and you make your moral judgment according not to the person who's lost it, but to the person who's found it.
Absolutely. And that was the conclusion that we arrived at, was if it was, we called it a life-changing amount of money. But then the argument started, well, what's a life-changing amount of money to you? And I was, well, I don't know, 1,000 quid or 5,000 quid, whatever it was. Well, that's fine, but somebody that's been on the dole for years and loses 100 quid...
Exactly that.
They may not be able to feed the electricity meter or feed their kids.
So what would you do?
If it was 100 quid or less...
Yeah, that's your... Because this is what we're going to do between now and 1 o'clock. Everybody has a price. All we're going to do is find out what it is.
Well, mine's 100 quid.
100 quid. Oh, so this watch is going straight back to the sender. I think I might be backwards. I might be looking at this through the wrong end of the telescope. I'm such a snowflake. I might have thought, in that example that you've given, I'd have thought if someone's lost that relatively small... No, that doesn't work. I don't know what I'd do. I'll tell you what, why don't you all send me a 25 grand watch by accident, and then we can find out. Eileen is in Croydon. Come on, Eileen.
Hi. Hello, James. Hi. Just before Christmas, we were delivered a pair of Kanye West trainers. Then my son came in from sixth form and he was so excited.
How much do Kanye West trainers retail for at the moment?
$600.
How much?
They were $600.
Shut the front door. For a pair of pumps? The world's gone mad.
They looked hideous. So they were the right size and everything, but we sent them back.
Who were they intended for?
We didn't buy them.
No, I know you didn't, but why did they end up in your house?
They came to our address. There was no name on the package. They were just our address.
Oh, your poor boy.
So we sent them back.
Has your son forgiven you?
Oh, no, he knew I would send them back.
Did he?
He knows, yeah.
Did you phone up and tell them that they'd been delivered? That no one would ever have known that
they went on a line and went to the delivery company, and the next day they came back for them.
There might be something dodgy going on there that you didn't even know about.
Well, maybe.
So you don't have to go to confession about this one then, Eileen?
No, I certainly don't.
You just reminded me, actually, once, and I suspect Dad did it more because we were probably in a hurry or running late or something, but we were driving through the Lake District once, and the lorry in front, I wonder if Mum remembers this, I know she's listening, the lorry in front, the back door of the lorry flew open and loads of boxes of sweets fell out, and we were about 3 or 4 cars back from... And the lorry obviously carries on driving, not knowing that the boxes... As a kid, it was like the kind of thing that only happened in your dreams. And the cars in front of us all kind of pulled over, and one of them, I remember this, was dishing out all the sweets to the other cars that had pulled over, and my late father carried on driving. My sister and I are in the back of the car going... And I mean, do you know what? I don't know that would be moral, would it, really? I think he probably was just late or cross. Where's the morality in that? It's not like they're going to be able to put them on... But anyway, we all have these curious little punctuation marks in our past. Jeff's in Guildford. Jeff, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Yeah, you know, I had an Xbox delivered to me about, 7 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I was ordering everything, loads of stuff online, and it was coming sort of thick and fast. And I was out in the garden, and this guy said, I've got a delivery for you, mate. I thought, all right, just sign for it.
And you could easily have been expecting a delivery that you didn't even realise you were expecting. I mean, that seems to be the nature of modern life, is that there's stuff popping up every 20 minutes.
That's it, yeah. So I just signed for it. I didn't even look at it. I took it in. And it was the same number as my house, but a completely different road, completely different area. And I said, oh, no. So I rang them up, and I said, look, I've got this by mistake. Yeah, no problem, mate. Yeah, we'll send a courier around, they'll pick it up. Right, he came and picked it up, took it away. 2 days later, I got another one.
Another Xbox?
Another Xbox, yeah. I thought, no, that's not right. I rang them up again and got them to pick it up again, and then I got another one. It was faulty, so they were sending me another one. So I thought, I just kept it.
Third time, mate. So there's 3 times and you're out. So I love this. We're combining.
Well, I didn't want to use it in case someone knew that I'd got a stolen Xbox.
There's a chip inside it. There's a chip inside it that goes back to Xbox HQ and says, Jeff is using a stolen console. Arrest Jeff. Arrest Jeff.
It was still in the roof and the box sealed up.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but I did try. I did the honest thing twice.
I think that unfortunately, jurisprudence is not yet sufficiently sophisticated to accommodate incredibly sophisticated ideas like 3 times and you're out.
That's it.
I'm with you. I've got your back, mate. Seriously, if they come for you, what's that? It's not a knock on your door there, Jeff, is it? If they do come for you, mate, I will crowdfund for your legal defence. All right.
Thank you.
You will be known as the 3 times and you're out one. Free the 3 times and you're out one. Free Jeff, the Guildford one. Kate's in Harpenden. Kate, what's going on?
Hi, James.
Hello, Kate.
I ordered a mountain bike. It was quite a cheap mountain bike online.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, and they delivered it. The guy delivered it, and then the next morning, the same guy knocks on the door with the same delivery again. And I said to him, "Well, you delivered this yesterday," and he said, "Yeah, but it's on my truck, and I've got to get it off my truck. So you better take it and deal with it however you want." So I kept both bikes and gave one to my flatmate.
Fair, I think that's fair enough. And oddly, the business model for a lot of these companies seems to be that it's too much hassle picking it up and taking it back, so you might as well keep it. We phoned up about something the other day, and they said, "Why don't you keep it?"
Yeah.
But they didn't do that. You were dealing with the delivery, so there's no way that was ever going. And it wasn't delivered in error to you. It had your name on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think legally you'd probably win on that one.
And just as an aside, actually, I just retweeted you an Amazon package I got last year, which is the tiny little scan disc memory card in a huge cardboard box.
Is it? Let me see if it's come. Here we go. Lovely stuff. I shall retweet that immediately. That is ridiculous. Absolutely. And is that real?
Yeah, for real. I actually. For real.
Now that I've never worked in an Amazon warehouse, but if I did, I would be fairly confident that this would be banter. This would be us working alongside each other and daring each other to ever new heights of ludicrous packaging. So to be clear, what Kate has here, and I'll retweet it from my account, is a genuine memory card, size of a SIM card on your phone, a tiny, tiny little thing, and it's in a box that would accommodate about, what would you say, Kate?
Maybe 1,000 of them.
No, I was looking more for eggs or something like that.
Oh gosh, I guess...
About 40 boxes of eggs?
About 5 hens at least. Actually,
I'm going to retweet it, and I want to hear from someone who works in these warehouses whether or not we're right in suspecting that there's no requirement to behave like this. You're just doing it because you think it's funny. Here, John, I'm going to put out a SIM card now in a box that's the size of a Range Rover. Nice one. 12-foot. Just imagining how I'd behave. You get so bored in those jobs. Retail's bad enough, but at least you got the customers to break up the tedium. Working in when they used to stick me in the stockroom when I worked in retail. Oh man alive! I told you what I ended up doing one year. I built an igloo out of shoeboxes in the stockroom at River Island on Worcester High Street. And on the day that Margaret Thatcher finally stepped down, my mate Dave came in and woke me up. I was sleeping off a hangover in an igloo in the shoe stockroom, and I'll never forget. He said, "I know he did an A-level. Thought you'd want to know. Margaret Thatcher's gone." It's 12:45. Well, that was interesting. I just answered the phone during the break because it was a normal London number, an 0207 number, and it was a bot. It was a recorded. We're told you've had a car accident recently, but it was clearly said her name, and then I sort of thought this sounds like a recorded message. So it was clearly recorded. So at what point does it stop being a recorded message? I've blocked the number and checked it on our website. It definitely was dodgy. But at what point? Do you see what I mean? Because I'm answering a bot, essentially, and there's that little thing at the beginning that covers up the fact that it's a bot. You go, hello, 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 my name is... When does the human go? I do not know. Life is full of mysteries. But here's an even bigger one. Where's the money that Boris Johnson spent on the Garden Bridge? You're not likely to get an answer from any of the Boris Johnson fetishising newspapers. I suppose chiefly one would have to put the Daily Mail and the Sun on that list. In fact, you're going to have to read the Architect's Journal to keep tabs on this story. And their managing editor, Will Hurst, joins me on the line now. What's the latest, Will?
Hi, James. Yes, well, the latest is that the spotlight seems to have moved slightly off Boris Johnson, although obviously he is due to answer questions. The first time a former mayor has ever been called by the London Assembly, he's due to answer questions before them on the 1st of March. But in the meantime, the spotlight has moved slightly onto Transport for London, which obviously is overseen by the mayor, but has its own commissioner. And what we've found out this week, and we broke the story this morning, is some really interesting information about a very key decision that the TfL boss, the Commissioner Mike Brown, made in early 2016. And this was the decision to award a grant of £7 million to the Garden Bridge Trust, the charity developing the project, just ahead of their decision to sign the construction contract with a big main contractor called Bouygues. So it looks as if this is something that Mike Brown and TfL have resisted trying to answer questions on, but it looks as if that was a very key decision and actually led to many more millions of pounds being spent, because obviously if you take on a main contractor, you're liable for big cancellation liabilities. So experts are telling us that they believe this particular decision could have led to around £16 million of spend, and that's out of a total of around 46.4 million, which we believe the taxpayer is going to lose on this project that was obviously never properly started. Now, the really worrying thing about this is that there were 6 conditions that TfL had to assess that the trust had met.
These are what we call safeguards, presumably.
Safeguards,
yes.
Yeah, for the public purse. And these safeguards, these 6 conditions, were in a document that had been signed in 2015 between the 2 organisations, Transport for London and the Garden Bridge Trust. Now, in this letter that we've seen, Mike Brown admits, yes, we determined these 6 conditions had been met, therefore we released the money. But when you look at them again, and I've talked to lots of experts on this, it's quite clear that many of them are questionable, and 2 of them don't seem to have been met at all. It's baffling that they would have decided to that these conditions had been met and the money should be released. Other than, of course, we know that Boris Johnson was putting all his officials under huge pressure to deliver this project, and we're talking about a time where
not just Boris Johnson, Joanna Lumley was as well. Don't forget.
And Joanna Lumley, yes. But the mayor, his end of his second term was approaching. This was before Sadiq Khan was elected. We're talking about January and February 2016 here.
And then, of course, there are those other wrinkles that have not been satisfactorily ironed out. I notice your columnist, Dan Anderson, makes the point today that the 2 individuals who he describes as having probably worked hardest to advance the project, these are TfL's Richard Decanny and the former Deputy Mayor for Transport, Isabel Dedring, are now gainfully employed at senior positions within Arup, the engineering firm that received a significant chunk of that money.
That's right. And the official...
Although to be clear, sorry to interrupt you, didn't Margaret Hodge conclude that there hadn't been any impropriety there? She found
no evidence of impropriety, but it doesn't look good, does it, when these key people were involved and then went straight to the main consultant and engineer on the bridge, Arup, as you say.
No, you would certainly want a little bit more transparency. 2 things now. Number one, do you think there is light at the end? Forgive the transport analogy. Do you think there is light at the end of the tunnel? Do you actually think that there may be difficult answers forthcoming that would leave the Foreign Secretary in a very, very exposed position? And the second question is, you don't have to answer this one, and I mean no slight by it. Why do you think the Architects Journal is doing all the heavy lifting on this when theoretically £46 million worth of public money spent in the most murky of circumstances by a man who now holds one of the great offices of state? Any ordinary rules of journalism, that would have scoop written all over it. And that's why you're carrying on with it, but why isn't anyone else?
Well, I will come to those questions, but I just wanted to say something before I do on Richard Decanny, because you mentioned him and Isabel Dedring. Richard Decanny, interestingly enough, is tied up in this latest story because he was still in post when this key judgment call was being made in early 2016. He actually assessed whether these conditions had been met, we understand, under the direct oversight of Mike Brown, the Commissioner. But still, you have the position where, astonishingly, Richard Decanny had handed in his notice on the 1st of January 2016 and told them that he was off to Arup, and yet he was allowed to remain in his post, to remain in charge of this key decision on whether £7 million should be spent, half from TfL, half from the Department of Transport. Mike Brown allows him to carry on doing that.
So I'm off to work. I'm off to work at this place.
It's quite astonishing.
You would imagine. So just to be clear, it's almost like before you go to work for that company, can you just give us a steer on whether or not we should give them £7 million?
Exactly. And he told Margaret Hodge, who was investigating this, Decanny told Margaret Hodge that Mike Brown had overseen it. But it's still an extraordinary decision to allow him to oversee this. And we know from correspondence with the Department for Transport that he tried very hard to say, come on, the conditions have been met, give us your half of the £7 million DFT. DFT never bought that argument. The civil servants there decided, that this money shouldn't be forthcoming, and they were overruled by ministers who were obviously talking to Boris Johnson.
You're not going to let this go, are you, Will Hurst?
Well, I haven't answered your 2 questions.
No, you haven't.
Come back to
yeah, well, briefly.
Briefly. Whether Boris has his comeuppance, I think, is very hard to tell.
Yeah.
He's extremely good at wiggling out of things. He's extremely good at distracting.
Yes.
And, he will shout Labour conspiracy.
He'll shout build a bridge over the English Channel.
Yes, he'll shout lots of things to distract us, but ultimately he'll say this is cooked up by his political opponents in other parties, which I think is entirely wrong, because every party should be shouting about this. Why are we doing the heavy lifting on this? I think it's a difficult one, but obviously a lot of the media is close to Johnson and for whatever reason wants to support that, and these are powerful people who yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
That's all right. Just getting it out there. And congratulations on your recent award. I didn't see you on the evening as I was being cruelly ignored by the judging panel. Will Hurst was galloping up to the stage to tell people what it was for.
Thanks, James. I did spot you, but then you disappeared again. So, yeah,
shame. A Ferrari was picking up gongs like it was going out of fashion. My mates at the Architects Journal got on it, and I'm just sitting there feeling the breeze as they waltz past me on their way up to the stage. Keep us in the loop on this one, won't you, Will? You know how interested we are, albeit that we remain baffled by the lack of interest displayed by other media outlets and individuals. £46 million worth of public money. Not a single brick laid. And now the man who oversaw it is Foreign Secretary, one of the great officers of state. Do you know, it's almost as if this country is being run in a completely opaque fashion, with one rule for the friends of the newspaper-owning plutocrats and a whole different set of rules for the rest of us. But, you know, blue passports, we'll all be okay.